Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman, and the show is brought to you by CartKing.com. That's cart-king.com, 877-986-7771. Have you ever thought about going into opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Perhaps your current business wants to add additional point-of-sale locations across the country quickly. Maybe you have a facility you manage right now and you want to add additional revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services down there in the lobby. CartKing.com can be the answer to your needs. CartKing.com is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile retail coffee, food, carts, and kiosks that money can buy. So what you do, no matter what kind of business you're in, you go to cart-king.com. You check out the different kind of carts, kiosks, booths that they have there, little display cases and stuff. You figure out which one is good for your business. You give them a call, 877-986-7771. They'll custom design it for you, applying to your business. They'll custom build it for you, and then they'll ship it worldwide. So no matter where you're listening to this, in South Africa, wherever you could be right now, cart-king.com, they can ship it worldwide. Okay, we're very excited about our guest today. We have two guests. We have William Ramsey joining us again. Everybody's familiar with good old William Ramsey. William Ramsey investigates and cult investigations. West Memphis 3 investigating Crowley all the time. But we also have Mike Boudet, who is a Sword and Scale podcast, okay? And he's undergoing this huge controversy right now. He has a huge podcast with millions of listeners, really. Covers a lot of different true crime topics. You could find him at swordandscale.com right now, but also Patreon. You can go to Patreon and you can find some of his shows are still uploaded up on there. Mike Boudet, are you there?
Yes. How you doing? Thank you very much for having me.
I'm doing okay. You know what? I'm doing okay, and I think I'm doing. How are you doing? Let's ask you that.
You're doing better than me, that's for sure.
Yeah, man. First, tell the audience who you are first, if they've never heard swordandscale.com. Who is Mike Boudet?
You bet. My name is Mike. I started this show called Sword and Scale about 5 years ago, where we were into our 6th season as of maybe about a week ago. And it's a true crime podcast, which doesn't hold back anything or sugarcoat anything. We tell you some of the most horrible stories you've ever heard of cases of dismemberment and child murder. And it has to do the way we do it, too, is we immerse you in the story. We play you the 911 tapes, the interrogation audio, the courtroom audio, and we just really put you into the story so you can feel firsthand what the actual victims felt.
Because you have a background as an audio engineer. That's your thing, right?
Yes, I do. I've been, I used to be in a band. I used to do music. I used to have a recording studio that I built way back in the day. And so I take special care to the production, the audio and all that, make sure that it's a compelling story and it's told as best as it can. I think that audio is a big part of the reason people listen to it, because it's produced very, very well. So,
and you had like tens of millions of downloads through multiple channels, correct?
I think it's over 200 million at this point. Like I said, we've been around for 5 years, so each episode gets about 1 million unique downloads, and so we've got about 133 episodes out there right now.
Gotcha. And you were one of the first, if not the first, real true crime podcasters out there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that was back in 2014. There was maybe 3 podcasts out there. Trisha's True Crime Radio, Dan Zupansky's True Murder, and there was another one that I can't remember the name of, but only one of those exists at this point, and there was nothing else other than that. And there was nothing that was like a storytelling type show where you can really, get immersed in the story and kind of go along with what the characters are feeling in the story. It's very much like watching a documentary, a well-made documentary on TV, but you can do it while you're doing housework or driving in the car. And so it's got a vast appeal to a lot of people that love this genre, which is a whole lot of people, apparently.
So let me ask you this. Now, you fell in love with doing this. Did you ever grow tired of it, or it's still a huge passion for you?
I mean, I love the idea. I love the idea of creating something that's, that you put your heart and soul into, and all this work, and then it's finally done, and you're so proud of what you did, and you want to show it to people. And there's a real if you can do something like that in your life as your profession, I mean, what else do you want? Like, it is a dream job. It is a dream job. It's always been for me forever, ever since I started it. And I realized that people actually liked it. It took me 2.5 years to actually monetize it. So I worked for free for 2.5 years to get it there, only to have it sort of taken away at the last minute.
Yeah. Now, I got tagged about a week ago, I guess it was, right, on Twitter.
Yeah.
Someone made the remark that I no longer, support, sword and scale. I had no idea what the controversy was about. And they said, because we're rude to your listeners. And I said, you got to be kidding me. I'm rude to my listeners all the time. I said,
me too.
Yeah, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
So what happened?
We're living in a really weird world of very, very soft people, I guess. And I think social media is part of that. I think it's become a place where, formerly these same sort of marginalized individuals would just sort of stay marginalized, and now they're going online and they're kind of forming little mobs and going after people because they don't like certain words said at them or just certain words in general. So yeah, I mean, I tweeted. I didn't tweet. I put a post on Instagram. I reposted a meme which had been around for. And I reposted it, and it had a pejorative for that's often used to describe female genitalia in it, but it was a joke about dismemberment, really. And we tell dark jokes, and we repost dark memes on the Sword and Scale Instagram constantly, because that's what you use Instagram for if you're a really, really graphic murder podcast. I mean, we're not going to post pictures of bodies and dismemberment. That's a step too far. But jokes and words and memes, I don't see what the big deal is. But apparently, I don't see things the way that a lot of people do these days.
Before you posted it, did you have like a moment of hesitation and think like, hey, maybe this is too far?
No, I was enjoying a lovely salad at Jason's Deli, and I ran across the meme, and I reposted it because I thought it was funny. And there wasn't a second where I thought, oh, this is the meme that's going to get me fired, because it's so absurd to take offense to something like that when it's, first of all, it's not directed at you personally, unless you really think you are the word that I said, and I guess then it is. But it's really a joke that, first of all, I didn't write. It's maybe a little dark, and maybe someone won't find it funny, right? But there's a difference between not finding something funny and then not finding something so offensive that you're going to actually destroy someone's livelihood, destroy the livelihoods of my entire staff. Because it's not just me. I have a staff of 9 people. So you're going to go ahead and tear something down and destroy it because you don't like a word they said. Now that's extreme.
It's not like you stole something or you hurt somebody.
Right. I often get that anyway. I often get these people that can't make a distinction between a joke and reality, sort of accusing me of being a psychopath and like thinking that I'm going to be the next story on my own show, just because they don't get dark humor. They don't get the fact that not everything has to be serious 100% of the time. You can poke light into certain dark topics. And in fact, that's kind of what comedy is based off of. All comedy, I think, is based off of tragedy. And so it's like you can't even say anything remotely comedic these days unless you're just poking fun at Trump, and then it's okay. It's such a weird place to be living, such a weird time to be living, where you can't even make a joke without getting fired.
So when you posted that, how did this roll into you losing advertisers from your show?
Well, it wouldn't have, and it didn't really. It didn't. The advertisers couldn't really, for the most part, care less what jokes I post on Instagram. What happens is you get a couple of individuals, like these 2 other podcasters. a guy named Aaron Mankey who does a podcast called Lore, and somebody named Rabia Chaudhry, who's somehow related to Adnan Syed from, you might have heard on Serial. He's the guy that killed his girlfriend, and she's been trying to defend him her entire life. Those two are friends with each other. I once posted back in October of last year that I thought Adnan Syed had killed his girlfriend. And she got really, really personal really fast, attacked me. Aaron Mankey jumped on board and started attacking me. And then the two of them went after me, started calling for a boycott on my advertisers and trying to get all my advertisers to drop me. This was back in October. When that didn't completely work, although it did kind of work, they did actually cost me quite a bit of ad revenue, but it wasn't enough. They went after Wondery. They tried to, Wondery is the network I was on, and they were trying to get Wondery to drop me back then. So
and how did they?
They were actively doing this.
Right. And so were they just using social media to try to malign you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they have 100,000 followers each, or something like that. I mean, it's a massive amount of people that they can just stir up into a frenzy. They could just go, hey, look at what this guy said, post some screenshots, and then get this mob of social justice warriors coming after someone and attacking them and boycotting them and doing all this stuff. And that's exactly what they did. They used their power, their social media power, to get someone silenced on the internet that they didn't like what they were saying. And it's a weird world where you can, just because you don't like what someone says, destroy everything they've ever worked for. Right. It's a weird place.
But so it's almost like they were lying in wait to look for something like this post that you posted last week to really continue. So it's not a one-time event. They had an agenda they were looking for to find an advantage over you.
Absolutely. And there's several people that don't like me on the internet, and over the years, because I've said something that's a little off color, or it doesn't go right in line with their particularly, extreme leftist beliefs, and I'll get attacked by these people for years. The same names. I recognize the same names of these same people that just keep coming after me again and again on social media because they don't like something I said 3 years ago.
I think Ed can relate to that.
Oh, yeah. But let me ask you a question. Do you have regret now? Do you regret, or do you say, no, I stand by the statement, I post it again?
Well,
you know what I mean?
I mean, I lost my show. So, yeah, I have regret in terms of, I had to have a very tough discussion with my staff. We're still trying to figure out if there's a way to move forward. There's 9 people that lost their jobs at the same time that I did, potentially. We haven't fired anyone yet, so we're working on it. But, of course, I do have that regret. I have more of a regret that we've come this far in America, a place where you're supposed to be able to say things without fear of, someone coming after you and taking away your livelihood. And it doesn't have to be the government. It's corporations now. We're living in a world where the public square is controlled by private entities in Silicon Valley. And they all lean a certain way. And when you don't play ball, you get silenced.
Yeah, I was just saying the other day, Facebook went down and people couldn't send instant messages back and forth to people. There was all kind of glitches. And it made the news, So it's reached a point where it's enough of a public utility that, we need it to communicate. It's part of our fabric of society. We have to take away their right to silence us for arguing with people. Like, the phone company doesn't shut off your phone if you're arguing with people. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not for taking away the rights of a private entity, but when you're something that big that's become so important in the national conversation, it's a really interesting thing to me that Jack, what's his name? Jack
Dorsey.
From Twitter. Dorsey went on Joe Rogan and talked about how they won't ban the president's Twitter account because, I think people need to see what he's saying, but then they'll ban anybody else at the drop of a hat. And it's, even though he admits that, the president has actually violated their own term.
Right. Well, Trump calls people out by name all the time. And in your instance, you just said something that was interpreted as off color, not directed towards anybody.
I mean, I think Trump threatened global nuclear war. So there's that. I mean, there's inciting violence. That's one of the rules on Twitter, I believe. So, yeah, I don't know.
Well,
it doesn't make any sense in that.
I was doing some research pre-show. I found it interesting today that Patreon researched your situation and came up with a different result than Wondery. They said you did not violate their doxing and hate speech directives.
Yeah, and I don't really trust that to stand up for very long. Okay. I mean, I think they have a history of violating their own terms of service and banning people that say something off platform anyway. That's right. How the whole Patreon purge started back in December. We're trying to move off of Patreon because we don't trust Patreon to keep us on there. I mean, there's already the fact that you saw that article means that there's been people that have actively been trying to get us kicked off of Patreon, getting them to investigate us and shut us down. And all it takes is a little pressure in the right, Do
you know if that's what happened to Carl Benjamin? Is that somebody reported him to Patreon? That was Sargon of Akkad. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly
what I didn't know that.
Well, they said he was reported by someone. And again, it was something that he said off platform,
right.
A different show. And he had said it 8 or 9 months prior. And it wasn't even when you look at it in context, he was talking to a bunch of white nationalists and calling them the words that they use.
Right. He was like belittling them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know much about him a lot. I don't really follow his account, but I do know a little bit about what happened here. I think most people don't look into it past the point of, oh, he said that word I don't like. And it's kind of sad because people have a lot of power when collected in a mob like that. And when they have a lot of power but not a lot of information, it becomes a very dangerous world.
That's very true. It's happened to me. I've been stalked by groups who are West Memphis 3 supporters by saying that they were guilty, which is objectively true. Same with Adnan Syed, for that matter. And these guys who were affiliated with the Serial podcast, Bob Ruff, has an army that, just came after me on Facebook. So something very similar. I never had any financial difficulties other than having my book pulled from Amazon, but I've had these kind of mobocracy groups try to sway the public and sway Amazon to get my book taken off.
Yeah, and Bob Ruff is another one that's come after me recently on Twitter. If you go and find his comments about me, I mean, it is really just at some point it's funny because you start watching this thing happen. There's this sort of like little pebble that turns into a snowball that just spirals into out of control avalanche, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't go. There's no apology at that point. There's nothing you can do to make it stop. It's just going to keep piling on. It's this sort of like high school mentality of everybody just sees where the cool kids are and they want to pile on and be like, me too. I'm part of that group. Let's take this asshole down. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can curse or not.
But let me ask you a question. Have you apologized? Have you made an apology?
No, and I won't because first of all, I didn't create the joke. I reposted it. It may be offensive to some, but it's a joke. You have a right to be offended. You can be offended. You don't have a right to destroy someone's career because you're offended.
Yeah, so stop listening. Just don't read the joke. Block it or pass.
Yeah.
And another thing too. Just clarify this for me. This joke was on Instagram.
Right.
What the hell does that have to do with what you show on Wondery?
Well, they started to pressure Wondery. So when it didn't work trying to get down my advertisers because I said something online they didn't like. Yeah. They actually literally went after Wondery. They doxed Wondery so that people would start calling their office and harassing them and going after the people that work there. And so, I don't blame Wondery for. I think that they were put into a really tough position, and they had to make a choice for their business. It's fine. I think that the people that actually started this, like Aaron Mahnke and Rabia Chaudhry, should face some sort of consequence in the social sphere for doing it, because it's disgusting behavior.
And how did Wondery contact you and give you this news? How did that go?
I got a call from their CEO and had a really tough conversation. I was obviously very upset, but they've been wonderful in terms of handling things professionally and helping us in any possible way that we can be helped at this point after the fact. So again, I don't hold any grudges against them.
And they have to be upset, too, because they must be losing a ton of money if you have all these listeners, right?
Well, here's the thing. We started with Wondery back when they started, when they were a brand new startup. Okay. And we were the first big show that they ever signed. And so everything they created was based off of the ability to have this massive show with a huge listener base that you could then promote new shows that you create on that platform and build your own intellectual property back catalog of shows. And so they've launched very successful shows since then on the back of Sword and Scale and its listener base.
I can see that. Now, how about the big ones like Libsyn and them? Aren't they flocking to you now saying, hey, Mike, bring your memes and stuff, bring them over here.
Nobody's flocking to me. I'll tell you that right now. Nobody is flocking to me. The thing is, when you become this pariah of the left, where they've now labeled you, they put a scarlet letter on you. It doesn't wash off very easily. And not only that, but here's the basic logic to it is, if these people as a mob want to take you down and have been successful at it already, now they're empowered. Now they know they can do it. And so if I go to another network, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to do the same thing again.
Yeah, but how about a network like Howard Stern is on, like Sirius Radio, something like that?
I love Howard Stern, but he's sort of shied away from controversy a lot in the last couple of decades, I would say. I think it's a tough thing to sell once you've been put in this place where they've and it's funny how they do it. They don't like what you say, so they attack the individual. They label you. They say you're a racist, you're a homophobe, you're a sexist, you're a transphobic. The latest one I heard was that I am mean to elderly people, which is hilarious because I think in the podcast space I'm one of the elderly people. But I don't even know where that came from. It's such a weird accusation, but they'll just throw anything and see what sticks and then retweet it until you're fired. That's what they do.
Okay, let's take a little commercial break. We're here with Mike Boudet. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show, Mike, and sharing this with us. His podcast is called Sword and Scale, but you can find it now on Patreon too as well. And I would encourage people, because he is going through a rough time here, to visit the Patreon down there and sign up for his podcast on there to catch that and support free speech. So we'll be right back with more of Mike Boudet and also William Ramsey, the great William Ramsey. We've been on the show about 20 times, right after these messages. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We're here today with William Ramsey from William Ramsey Investigates, and also Mike Boudet from SwordandScale.com. You could find him on Patreon. Oh boy, now, do you feel like...
I love your reaction. Your reaction's great.
I got kicked off YouTube a couple of times, and that was enough pain in the butt, and stations have kicked me off and, all that. But this is such a direct attack on freedom of speech because the offense, did not occur on the station. It didn't occur on the show. Why is the show being penalized for behavior on Twitter or whatever that stuff is? Okay, even if it's the worst thing in the world. Okay, he's over there, doing something evil over there. What does that have to do with where you work?
We saw this with Alex Jones being banned. This is the first sort of step towards this sort of control of behavior based off of the masses. And it happened with Alex Jones where he was being banned off of platforms that he did not say or violate any terms in, just because he had said something on a different platform somewhere else that they didn't like, that went against their beliefs. And it's really nothing that got anyone hurt or other than emotionally maybe, but it's not anything violent. He's not asking anyone to go after anyone or anything like that. Yet it started there, and now it's become this sort of like, oh, that's what we do now. This is okay. This is how we do things now because it worked. He got deplatformed, he got demonetized, and now we can go after anyone else. All the small fish we can go after now because we got the big one. So that's where we're at. Anything you say, and here's the thing. It's becoming really scary, guys. We're living in a world where I have maybe like 12 Alexas in my house, and they hear me talking no matter what room I'm in. My phone is constantly listening. We put devices on our own person to record and monitor our conversations. And at what point does that become part of what they can remove you from the conversation or public sphere? Because of, or demonetize you, take away your job. What happens when this starts happening to private individuals? You're no longer a public individual. They can monitor your what you said in your own home and get you fired because they don't like it. When does that end? I don't think it's ending anytime soon.
Do you think it's any coincidence that this whole incident was instigated by this Saeed crowd at the same time the HBO show pops up and there's all that related attention and publicity?
I think that there may be some connection. I don't know, because this kind of started back in October when I first dared to suggest that maybe Rabia Chaudhry was wrong and she was a little biased and maybe a little racist in some of her Twitter remarks. And that, I thought that Syed had killed his girlfriend. It's the most likely scenario, and it's Occam's razor. The most likely thing to have occurred is probably what did.
Well, it's interesting you say that because the Maryland Court of Appeals just ruled on Friday that is the case on a 4-3 decision and upheld the conviction. So there's really nowhere else you can really go. And it's strange that the timing of that came out with the Amy Berg documentary, The Case Against Adnan Syed, which she did another documentary on the West Memphis 3 that was, very suspect.
And the timing also was right before, I got kicked off of Wondery. So, yes, you're right. There's a little bit of weirdness there with the timing of all of this. Yeah, I agree.
Well, I just think it's odd that the Court of Appeals put their decision out right there when this public, this HBO special came out. I think that timing was incredible.
And what is the HBO show? What is their position on this case?
Syed's
innocent. I don't know. Is part 2 out yet? I only saw part 1, and I think that it was a little bit on the fence.
My understanding is they're taking a sympathetic view of Syed, so that's my understanding.
Why don't you give me the background on the Syed case? I haven't been following it.
Well, it was a case that happened almost 18, 19 years ago in Maryland. It was Adnan Syed had a girlfriend, Hey Min Lee, or something like that. She was of Korean.
Hey Min Lee, yeah.
Hey Min Lee. And they broke up, and she disappeared and was found in a park. And eventually a friend who helped Adnan Syed with the case, basically told the police everything that happened. And what really, he was convicted. This is a brief recitation. Adnan Syed was convicted, but what really brought the story of Adnan Syed to the public was a podcast called Serial that took a sympathetic view of Adnan Syed and re-looked at the case as if he could have been innocent. And that was really a turning point. And that was downloaded tens of millions of times as well, and really created this kind of cause celeb situation, much like the West Memphis 3. And, all this money poured in sympathy, and there was a new witness, so supposedly there was ineffective assistance of counsel. And I think that there was a call for a new trial, and then this latest court case, the Maryland Court of Appeals, in a 4-3 decision, pretty much sealed the case that he is properly found guilty. So how the public spins the story, how these podcasters spin the story, is another tale. And Rabia Chowdhury is a relative of Adnan Syed, and I believe she's a lawyer, and she has always been on the side of innocence.
She's actually the one that got Serial to become a thing. She's the one who petitioned Sarah Koenig, who is the creator of Serial, to tell this story back, 4 or 5 years ago, whenever Serial came out.
I didn't know that.
Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened. Yeah, and it's in the HBO doc. It's clear how biased she is, and the weird part is I still don't know what her connection is to Syed. She sort of mentions him as almost like a little nephew at one point, and then she says something else that seems like she's even closer related. So I'm not really even sure what that relationship is. But, she's obviously not coming from a place of looking at things from a detached perspective. And neither was Serial. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but part of these documentaries, the lure of a lot of these documentaries, is to paint the person who's been convicted of a crime as innocent, and then try to explain that or try to raise reasonable doubt. It's the interesting part of the case when you can sort of raise some interesting questions and raise some reasonable doubt in the mind of the audience, just like you would in the mind of a jury if you were a defense attorney. But it doesn't mean that, you can't just dismiss your common sense at that point. You have to kind of look at the thing as a whole and realize that who else had motive? Is some serial killer out there that's still around? Give me a break.
Yeah, they tried to blame this other guy, the new boyfriend of Hey Min Lee, and that there was this whole issue of time cards that Bob Ruff staked his whole kind of view of Adnan's innocence upon. But according to the new investigators associated with this show, it's not possible that the time card could have been forged, which kind of negates Bob Ruff's opinion. But yeah, who else could have who killed her? And I think that there was corroborating cell phone evidence that showed that Adnan Syed was also in that park area around the time that the crime occurred, if I remember correctly.
So the girlfriend turns up strangled, right? The boyfriend has no alibi. And then you're saying there was a friend who helped him, who came forward to the police?
Right, I forgot his name now. But, that was the chief witness for the prosecution, was a guy who knew the story of the murder.
Okay, yeah, that seems like a pretty solid case to me. It seems like with a lot of these, like Making a Murderer, where they add these dramatic music, and then they have a lawyer there pontificating on justice. Let me give you a little speech on justice. There was justice today.
Yeah.
Why do you have to add all that in? Just give the facts to the kids, man, and let us make up our mind. What do you got to add music for?
Well, that's the storytelling part of it. Otherwise it's just like a dry news report. I get it. I get why they do that, and it totally makes sense. In terms of you're trying to sell this show, you're trying to make it something that people are really immersed by and want to talk about at the water cooler the next day. But I mean, Stephen Avery is guilty as sin. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, it's the same with the Paradise Lost films. Try to make sympathy for the three convicts. I mean, this is the new kind of theme, is to cast doubt on properly adjudicated criminal cases.
Absolutely.
So that's also scary.
So, Mike, when you do your show, do you come to a conclusion on guilt or innocence, or you just leave it up to the audience?
Well, we don't do that. We don't play that little game of like trying to paint this picture of a guilty person who's actually innocent and behind bars and there needs to be justice. We don't play that game. Yeah. We just tell you a story that's fully kind of worked its way through the court process and been convicted and tried and all that, and it's done. And so, because we don't like to do missing persons cases either, because the ending is always the same, and we don't know what happened. That's not a good ending. But we tell you some of the worst cases that are out there, and we kind of walk you through the whole thing and really break it down. I think it's a different animal altogether. We don't want to tell you what to think either. It's not me giving you my opinion about what happened. And you get to hear the 911 tapes. You get to hear the interrogation audio. You get to be placed in the actual place as if you were sort of a fly on the wall witnessing the whole thing. And that's what makes it interesting to a lot of our listeners.
And if you wanted to invite the audience to come check out your show, do you have a particular show you're most proud of?
Well, I think the one that stands out quite a bit is pretty rough one, just so you understand what you're getting yourself into. But it's a two-part show called 33 episodes 33 and 34, and it's about a guy named Luca Magnotta, who is one of the most vile human beings to have ever graced this planet, and you'll find out why if you listen.
And what was his crime?
He wanted to be famous, and he went on a bunch of reality TV shows. And when he couldn't sort of make it in that world, he couldn't be famous, he decided to become infamous. So he started this campaign where he would create these fake online accounts that would talk about him, pretend like he was bigger than he was, that he was this big deal, this big star, and trying to build himself up. When that didn't go as far as he wanted it to, he decided he needed to, up the ante. So he would start torturing and killing small animals like kittens by putting them in a bag, sucking all the air out with a vacuum and watching them suffocate on video, and make a video of it and put it online, and then sort of attribute the video to him, but through a different account, and then kind of say, oh, these people are lying about me. They're making up stories about me. There's all these people out there trying to get, ruin my reputation, and building himself up that way. Okay. And then when that didn't work, he decided to up the ante once again, and he did it with a human being he found on Craigslist, where he filmed the whole thing. You can actually still find it online and watch it, where he's killing and dismembering a young man that he lured on Craigslist. It's an incredible story because there's a social media aspect to it. At the end where the video is out there, there's all these people on YouTube watching it and filming reaction videos of themselves watching it and laughing about it and pretending like it's all a big joke. And it just goes to show you how sick and twisted we've become in this new age of social media. So it's a fascinating look at the whole, paradigm we're living in right now.
Yeah, it has all the same ingredients. The fake online accounts, Craigslist, all the same that's making our lives miserable. Have you ever considered now, since you put so much time and effort, these are highly produced episodes. It's not like an interview format like I'm doing, right? These are highly produced with like you said, audio from the 911 calls. I love that kind of stuff, by the way, too. I love that kind of stuff. And I can sit and read court transcripts all day long like an idiot. Have you considered doing like full-length documentary films? You got a huge audience.
Right now, I'm just trying to figure out what to do so that my staff doesn't get laid off. We've been actually in talks now with a company in LA who's been working on a pilot of a TV show for Sword and Scale. We're not exactly sure where we are now in that process, and to be quite honest, I'm not sure if I don't know what's happened after this whole snafu, I guess, over the last week. So I don't know. Right now, we're just kind of focused. I'm focused personally on trying to save my employees from the unemployment line.
Yeah, and how do you feel about, because you've mentioned before, people in the public eye being held to a higher standard for their beliefs and their opinions and their jokes?
I mean, I guess there's something to be said about that. You sort of do have some responsibility not to do certain things. That I think that a lot of the sort of common people, I don't know what to call them, the non-public people that are out there on Twitter and Instagram get to say whatever the hell they want, and they can actually do things that are kind of dangerous and band together in this mob mentality to do things that are dangerous. I don't know. I mean, I think we should all take a little more personal responsibility and not be crappy people. And by being crappy people, I don't mean not telling jokes online that somebody may be offended by. I mean, stop doing the really crappy things like destroying someone's livelihood.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the whole issue, too, of, when you are in the public eye and you're coming into contact with thousands and thousands and thousands of people every day, you get a lot of contact from these people. A lot of it's bizarre. A lot of it's stalking. A lot of it's harassment. A lot of it's just downright rude. They're demanding things from you. I get calls at work. They want me to work for them for free every day. Okay? And I can't even afford to pay for the 800 number they're calling on. They want me to come work for them for free because their case is so important. Have you experienced a lot of that?
I mean, do you have any idea how many times a day I get called a pejorative name by someone online? I mean, it's so much more than you can comprehend, I think. And then I thought about this. I thought about this because I'm just a dumb podcaster that does a true crime show. I cannot imagine what someone like, let's say, Chrissy Teigen or one of the Kardashians or, one of these people that are multiples of sort of fame higher than me experience on daily. It must be the kind of thing where you need several therapists working on you constantly to get over it. Because you know how many people are calling your names? I mean, that doesn't just go away. You don't just brush that off just because, some person with 12 Twitter followers tells you to man up. It's harassment. It is constant digital harassment every single day of your life when you get into this business. And it didn't used to be that way. It used to actually be kind of fun to be a celebrity. Now it kind of sucks in a lot of ways. So.
You can't help but become a little defensive and a little abrasive toward the public, You can't.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet. And I didn't understand before, like when famous people like that I respected and really liked, when you saw them in public, they were really kind of standoffish and didn't want to really talk to you. Now I get it. Now I understand why they're like that.
Yeah. And then there's people too, like they think they have a relationship with you, because they're isolated, they're lonely people, and you can hear from them 4 or 5 times a day. They say, "Hey, I'm going to a doctor's appointment later." You don't know these things, but they've got this whole world going on in their head. They're not evil, they're not bad. They're probably nice, but
well, the ones that are bad are the ones that like get upset when you don't respond to them. Like, you have 1 million people listening to your show. You're going to get a lot of tweets and a lot of PMs and people, trying to reach out to you and pretend like they're your best friend. And if you don't get back to them right away, some of them get mad. Some of them get upset. Oh, I've supported you ever since blah, blah, blah. And you're not a nice person. You're a jerk. So that happens a lot too.
Yeah, right. You could be messaging back and forth with somebody, like say on Facebook, you have a messenger window open, and then another one pops open, and what you're typing shows up in the other box because you're trying to talk to someone, but someone else is interrupting you, and it just confuses everything. It's just overwhelming, man. And I tell you, Mike, God bless you, man. What is your plan? Do you have a plan? to get out?
Nothing right now. No, I'm doing whatever I can. I'm trying to figure things out behind the scenes. It's really a lot. I think a lot of people out there have this gross misconception that, so Wonder doesn't want you just go get on another network. You just go do, you're big enough. Just go do that. It's not that easy. There's a lot of moving pieces here. There's a lot of things that this sort of threw a monkey wrench into, and it's not that easy to pick yourself up and start over after something like this, despite how many people like you or what. There's a lot more to it than that, and so trying to work on that.
And you say you have this big staff, like 9 people. Are you like all in the same town, in the same city, or are they spread out all over the country?
Oh no, we're a new age company. Everybody works from home. Everybody communicates via text and online. So yeah, they're spread out everywhere.
See, that's another problem with all this, because I'm the same way too. And sometimes you just need a hug, man. You know what I mean? You need to sit down and have you need the staff. You need the whole staff.
A company picnic. Yeah.
Till 3 a.m. drinking. What are we gonna do? And you got to have that. We're losing so much, man. We're giving up. We're sacrificing human contact, human civility, decency.
Yes.
Decency.
Yeah. Well, we're pretty much running out of time. Why don't we, William? What do you want to leave us with before we go?
Well, I just wish you the best, Mike. I hope everything works out. I hope you find a place to land with your show. And you're kind of this unfortunate position to, have livelihood taken away by really militant groups who have an axe to grind. So I feel for you, man. I wish you well.
Well, William, Ed, thank you so much for having me on. I'm a bit of a pariah at this point, so I appreciate anybody that'll give me a little bit of time to talk about this. And, thank you so much. That's all I can say. Thank you very much for this.
No, thanks for coming on. And I really hope that people see the human side of Mike here. We're not all robots. No one's perfect. We just all get along with each other. Let's do the best we can and help each other out. We don't need to be fighting all the time and have a position to fight. By the way, Mike, you mentioned leftists a bunch of times. I'm a super leftist, man. I look at Castro with suspicion, man. I'm a leftist, man. I have Black Panthers on my show. I got people in prison on my show. So, and I believe
I'm a leftist too. I'm a social leftist. I think for the most part, I don't believe in discrimination against anyone. I think that LGBT rights should be all those rights should be for everyone. And so, but yeah, I still get sort of pigeonholed into this personality that people think I am.
Yeah, and we all don't need to agree with each other on every issue. We can disagree. I had Bob Ruff on the show. I didn't agree with him at all. I was polite with him until he goes on Twitter and starts insulting me. But whatever.
I got to hear that one.
Who needs it? But anyway, Mike, Boudet, thank you so much. People can still go to swordandscale.com. Check him out on Patreon. If you're not a member on Patreon right now for Mike Boudet and Sword and Scale, you should do it now, just for the issue of free speech and supporting free speech, and just supporting somebody who needs your support this time, needs a hug. All right, guys, thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Bye-bye.
Good night. Okay.